Hey there, Adoption Roadmap listeners. It's podcast editor Josie here. And today we're bringing you something a little bit different. Over the past few months, we've had some truly powerful conversations with guests who've been through it all. So today, we're bringing you 5 of the most powerful, practical pieces of advice for hopeful adoptive parents. If you're newer to the podcast, this is the perfect way to catch up. And if you've been with us for a while, first of all, thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. But maybe this episode will hit differently hearing it all a second time. So let's dive in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, your go-to guide through the beautiful, complex, and transformative journey of adoption. I'm Rebecca Gruenspan, a single mom through adoption consultant for over a decade, author of the Adoption Roadmap book, and your trusted guide. In each episode, we dive into real experiences, expert insights, and the raw, honest truths that you will need to navigate your journey. Whether you're just beginning, in the thick of it, or well past placement, you'll find support and community here to help you navigate this unique path with confidence and love. Adoption isn't all rainbows and butterflies. It is life-changing and worth every bit of effort. Let's learn, grow, and journey together on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Cam Lee Small, a Korean-American transracial adoptee, licensed clinical counselor, author, and TEDx speaker. Cam is dedicated to promoting adoption literacy across the U.S. and beyond, helping adoptees, adoptive families, and professionals better understand the lifelong impact of adoption. Through his counseling practice, speaking engagements, and his book, called The Adoptee's Journey from Loss and Trauma to Healing and Empowerment, Cam shares valuable insights on identity, loss, and healing. His personal and professional experiences provide him with a unique perspective on the complexities of adoption and highlight the importance of lifelong support for adoptees. I want to jump in with something that really moved me as I was doing my research before you came on. I would love for you to start by reading your letter to future adoptive parents.
Dear Mom and Dad, you'll arrive tomorrow at the airport. You're so excited. You've been waiting for this moment for so long. It means so many things for you as you take this significant step in the process of adopting. Your life is about to change forever. I fell asleep tonight for the last time in my mom's arms. I don't know that, though. In fact, there's so much I don't know. Right now, I'm tucked in, cozy. Tomorrow, I'll be torn apart, terrified. Part of me will remain here as if she holds me in her heart permanently. Another will be taken to the airport as if nothing really is permanent. You'll hold me in your arms as I scream for her. I'll hold her in my imagination. I'll do everything in my power to get back to my mom, my home, my country. But I'm only a toddler, and my life is about to change forever. I'll thank you genuinely, but you won't hear it for at least 30 years. I'll love you then, but only after discovering the love that knew me even before my first day. Can you wait that long? Tomorrow will be our first day together and our first day apart. Thank you in advance for your patience.
What inspired you to write this?
There was an invitation from a fellow adoptee activist, and her name is Hannah Jackson Matthews. And it was part of a project that she was working on. And this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it was really a way for me to continue processing my own story, as well as invite viewers, listeners, anyone who would engage with this, invite them into a heightened layer of empathy for the adoptee experience. And I know that, there's a saying, if you've met one adoptee, you've met one adoptee. Okay. So my story is not everyone's story. And yet there's something about putting that perspective out there that I would hope, could resonate with folks who are interested in considering different perspectives.
Yeah. Such powerful words. I'm curious. First of all, how long ago did you write that? Like, where were you in your journey?
Right. So this was, I think, maybe in 2018. And I've been doing adoptee activism, volunteering, even informal types of counseling since like 2008. But for me, in 2018, this was, I earned my master's in counseling psychology in 2015. And then I was on the on the pathway to licensure. And I just launched my private practice, Therapy
Mm-hmm.
Redeemed. And I was very interested in how adoptee activists were leveraging social media and just the ability to reach many people, especially adoptees, even to read a blog post to say, wow, that's me. I see myself represented in this essay that someone wrote. So I had already been in Reunion. I've gone through the process of searching, working with Eastern Child Welfare Services, traveling to Korea, all of that. And yet there, I was learning firsthand that Reunion isn't a one size fits all solution to the complexities of adoption. And I was still holding a lot of questions and a lot of grief. And as a mental health professional, I know that part of that work includes self-reflection and then community engagement, the witness aspect,
Mm-hmm.
where when our stories are witnessed by others, that's part of the healing process. When others can say, I see you, I hear that, that makes sense to me, rather than what do you have to be sad about? So that's where I was in that process, and helping, walking alongside other adult adoptees, adoptive families, and really, leaning into this work of adoptee consciousness, adoption advocacy, adoption literacy.
Have you always been a great writer like that? It was so poetic.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. Thank you. I think for me, it's just the process of like connecting with others in the community to say, yo, we're putting our hearts out here, and not that we owe it to people, and not that we're, are needing some kind of like brilliant affirmation, but to say, is anyone else feeling this way? Am I the only one who's ever thought about this? And I think the blessing curse of internet is you can put your stuff out there, but the strength of this digital age is that someone in Australia can read this and be like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, well, thank you for that. I didn't know there was a word for that kind of grief. And I'm just so, thank you for that. And then that allows them to share a little bit more of their story.
Yeah. I'm imagining it wasn't super easy to write. But thank you for writing it and being so vulnerable and doing so. You mentioned that this was after your reunification with your birth family. So your birth mom is still in Korea, or
Correct.
Was when you reunited with her. That must have been a pretty profound experience. I'm curious what you knew about her previously, if anything, and how long prior to actually finding her had you had this desire for reunification? Was it always from when you were a little kid? Did you hang on to that? Or was that a newer thing as you were creeping into your adult years?
A lot of the listeners know this idea of, trauma freezes our bodies in the past. So I think about like maybe cognitively,
Mm-hmm.
I I didn't have words to say something like I miss my mom. I
Mm-hmm.
miss Korea. I'm sad about being separated. And I grew up with my Korean mother and father in Busan for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after my dad died, that's when my mom was sort of approached by these professionals and people in the community. And that ultimately led her to make this decision for relinquishment, because her belief was that the best thing for Hisong would be international adoption. So I spent 6 months in foster care, and I was placed at 3.5 years old. So I didn't have language. I didn't have English language. I was speaking Korean. And I think there's like I said, the cognitive piece in my mind, it wasn't formed yet, but that visceral, the like, oh my goodness, what is happening to me? I,
Mm-hmm.
I was just in Korea last night eating this food, surrounded by the sensory experiences. Now, why am I on this train to an airport? I don't know what an airport is. Why am I on this big, huge machine, airplane thing? It's loud. And why are they giving me to these strangers? Oma, where are you? Right. So that's in the body. And throughout my life, I think I really struggled to put my finger on it. Like I knew something's off, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the mental health support. No fault to my parents or folks around me. I didn't have the mental health support to help me explore that, express that, and learn how to negotiate and manage those normal responses to abnormal situations. So in Korea, I mean, growing up, I had my intake documents that my parents let me look at whenever I wanted to. And there was some information about my mother in there. And then it was the fill in the blanks. And again, no fault to my parents, but they were sort of like leaning into what the intake document said, that maybe she was going through some kind of hardship, financial hardship, emotional hardship that prevented her from being able to parent me somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I would have grown up there, maybe my situation could have gotten worse. So that's kind of the ideas in my mind. And then, yeah, as a child, as a teen, you kind of fill in the blanks. And it's not like my parents were checking in on me about, hey, let's give you space to kind of think about this a little bit more, or introducing me to other adoptees. It was in the 80s in the middle of Wisconsin. So the interest came when I was approached by a Korean American pastor, and he invited me to his church plant in Madison, Wisconsin, and then being sort of introduced to a larger Asian American community for the first time ever. There was an identity sort of reckoning of like, who am I? Who are these people in relationship? What does it mean to be Asian American?
Mm-hmm.
And then in that church, I was introduced to a couple of adoptees there who invited me to serve as a camp counselor. So through that whole season, I started hearing reunion stories of, campers, other adult adoptees, as I was volunteering at different events. And one adoptee that I worked with, especially, shared his story with me. And really, for me, I was like, why would you want to search? I didn't know that you could search. And really thought provoking questions and dialogue that he had with me. And all of that culminated into, I think I'm ready. I'm going to contact my adoption agency. And um, it seemed random, but a woman came in to a place that I was working at and learned that I was adopted, and said, "Hey, I've got some information. If you're ever interested in searching for birth family, here you go." And that was she was part of a string of very important meetings, I would say, through that season that helped me. So it was about 4 or 5 years till I heard back from the adoption agency. We
Oh, wow.
located someone who was a candidate, and sort of pushed the process forward that way. So meeting my mom, I didn't have much information besides the intake documents and my assumptions.
Okay.
And then in that meeting, there were challenged assumptions. Like, this is a person, a multi-dimensional person with her own lived experience. And, we can talk more about that, but just being able to hear her story from her point of view right there in person in front of her, and ask questions back and forth. was a real gift to me. And I'm very thankful for that. I wish there could be more. I'm hoping there could be more. We're in a holding pattern as we speak. And that's the thing about ambiguous loss is that, yes, we reunited, but even, I mean, as we're talking right now, I don't know her whereabouts. I don't know who would contact me if anything happened to her, illness, harm, death. That's part of the ambiguity of it. But being able to meet her and hear just more of her story fleshed out, that made a difference for me. Also, more questions, but that's kind of what led me into the counseling space. Are there other adoptees going through this kind of stuff? And how can I help be a part of that?
Today, we're diving into one of the most challenging and emotional aspects of adoption, addressing the medical and health concerns that many hopeful families face. Our guest is Dr. Sara Silvestri, a board-certified pediatrician, adoptive mom of 2, and the founder of the Adoption Doc LLC. With her extensive experience in adoption medicine, Dr. Silvestri specializes in educating adoptive families about the complexities of prenatal exposure, birth family, medical, and mental health history, and the gray areas that come with these issues. Dr. Silvestri is here to demystify common fears, from the impacts of substance use during pregnancy to the risks of STDs and genetic disorders, and provides practical, informed advice to help families. So when it comes to going through the checklist of criteria, so when you're a hopeful adoptive parents, you get this questionnaire. What are you open to and what you aren't open to? And there's usually an option. It goes through all these drugs and mental health issues and all these things. And the options are check yes or no. Is it truly that simple to just check yes or no?
Yeah, no, absolutely not, right? It it was that checklist that made me start doing this, that made me start this business. Yes, yeah. 10 years ago when we started the adoptive process, we were with an agency at that time that gave us a checklist that was just yes and no, and there was no gray area, there was no room for comment. It was black and white, yes and no. And I struggled with that checklist. I hated that checklist. And that stayed with me through the years as we went through the adoption process twice. And then by the time we finished, I was like, if I have struggled with this, how are other families doing it? And that's why I started doing this. There is nothing black and white about these issues. There is so much gray space and so much nuance to it. It's really a shame that some people were still looking at those issues as black and white and asking those kind of determinations to be made.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started this business 13 years ago almost, everything, all the applications were still written. And I used to tell my families, just write in, it depends, or write in notes. But now I don't know if it's all still yes or no, or if there's some agencies that have like write notes on this side. But electronically, it may just be yes or no. So, you know, hopefully there's an opportunity to have a bigger conversation, you know, whether it's we want to see them and then discuss further or, you know, stuff like that. But what should parents really be looking for and asking themselves when they're just starting the process and they have to think about, well, what are we open to? What are we not?
Yeah. You know, the biggest thing that parents need to do is be honest with themselves, right? What are you able to see yourself handling at this point in time? Maybe you are, you know, this will be your first child. You have a lot of extended family around you, a lot of support, and you can see yourself easily taking in a child with extra needs versus a family that may already have 2 or 3 kids with special needs. Can you really add another kid with significant special needs into that mix? Every family is different, and there's not a right or a wrong, right? We all feel badly. We don't want to say no to somebody. We don't want to be open to a situation. But we do have to be honest about what we are capable of and what our comfort level is, right? So that would be step one, is what is where is that level of comfort? What are we really able to do? Step two is thinking about those biases, right? Asking ourselves about them. Do I have a bias? Do I have a bias about exposure? Do I have a bias about race? Do I have a bias about, mom's history or something else? And again, being honest with ourselves, learning. If I do have a bias, where did that come from? And what do I need to think about instead? How do I open my mind up about that? And what do I need to learn? If I don't know what happens really when a baby is exposed to substances and I have a bias because a substance is there, let me go learn. Let me go seek more information. Let me go ask for help and go from there, right? If we walk in with a closed mind, I think we only do a disservice to ourselves and to those kids in the future, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's the key point is people don't know what they're open to or not because they don't, not all the time. And most people come in with a bias, right?
Absolutely.
So on my intake form, when I'm asking things like, what are you open to as far as race? Because it really determines what my conversation is with them. And, when they ask me things like, how likely are we to adopt? When you're coming in saying, I want a white baby, no drug exposure, and I want that baby to be a girl and blah, 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 then that's a different conversation that somebody who marked, yes, I'm open to everything, right? But I write in parentheses next to, are you open to opioid exposures? I put in parentheses, keep in mind that most white birth mothers are using, or white expectant mothers are using opioids on a daily basis. And so when they mark no, and then I might ask them about it on our call, they'll say, well, I marked no, but I really don't know much about it. And that starts a conversation. So I'm glad I have that on there because it's their first piece of education about adoption. And they so appreciate the forthcomingness, right, of it, of just learning these things. And
yes, exactly.
seeing if they can overcome that bias. So I'm going to kind of ask you, because I know that people listening want to know the effects of this and this and this. So I'm going to kind of go through a speed round with you, as speed as we can get with getting, without getting into the nitty gritty, but giving us enough information that we can make a little bit of an educated decision. What is considered an opioid and what are the risks to a baby?
So opioids are essentially medications that are derived from the poppy plant, right? So they can be directly derived or synthesized to mimic those chemicals in the poppy plant. Opioids, from a short-term aspect, are ones that are relatively highly associated with more severe withdrawal in a newborn. So that's something that's a little bit more unique, I should say.
I like uniquer.
Yeah, right. Either way, we'll just make up words. A little more unique to the opioids. And then in the long term, amongst many problems that can happen, some of which are not as severe or less severe, but most commonly, we'll see ADHD and executive functioning problems with the opioids.
I often think of opioids as pain pills.
So heroin, oxycodone, OxyContin, fentanyl, a lot of times they are. And that's what kind of started the opioid epidemic, right? It was or at least the proposed start of the opioid epidemic, let's say that. The overuse of pain pills for actual pain that caused addiction in people. But yes, they are typically used to treat pain in a medical type of situation.
Are all opioids created equally as far as the effects that it has on a fetus?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great question, right? So the answer is probably not, but not fully known, right? So methadone is used to treat opioid use disorder, and it's essentially an opioid. It's seeming to have a better outcome overall in comparison to something like, oxycodone, right?
Mm.
Fentanyl, as often as we do see it right now, is not well studied at this point to know. We lump it in with the other opioids. We assume it's going to do the same stuff as the other opioids, but we don't have great data to prove that right now. So it's a no with a little bit of a, we'll find out in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's the difference between methamphetamine and amphetamine?
Okay. So methamphetamines and amphetamines are in a class of drugs called stimulants. So the amphetamines are things like Adderall or Vyvanse and are used in treatment of medical disorders. In particular, the most common is ADHD. So that is one that's going to come, and be medically prescribed for a reason. Methamphetamines is a very similar stimulant, but it's completely an illegal drug. It is not something that's used in the medical establishment. It's in most cases considered to be more potent than what we see medically prescribed.
What are the risks to the baby and is it the same risk for methamphetamine and amphetamine? And methamphetamine is often referred to as meth.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So the risks of methamphetamines and amphetamines are in a lot of ways similar to the opioids. Mm-hmm. They have a little bit less likelihood of getting to the point of severe withdrawal needing treatment in comparison to the opioids for a newborn. They also have a little bit of a higher, stronger effect on the placenta during pregnancy. And so there can be, some extra complications during the pregnancy itself secondary to that. So those are a couple ways that the methamphetamine and the amphetamine stand out outside of the opioids.
So do you think, is it more of a concern for you than opioids?
It depends, right? I always tell families it depends when I'm looking at these situations on how much mom's using and where she's at, right? So the uterine concerns the umbilical cord concerns are not common, but they do happen here and there. And so if I'm looking at a situation where mom is early on in the pregnancy and she's using a stimulant, so cocaine is a similar stimulant, right? Okay. So if she's a heavy cocaine user, a heavy methamphetamine user, and it's early in the pregnancy, I would be more nervous about that than if she was 35 weeks. Because at least we've gotten through most of the pregnancy, and some of those umbilical cord issues are less likely to be an issue at that point in time. So that makes me feel a little bit better.
Okay.
It's, again, it's all how you look at it, and it's all relative. I always say everybody has a different risk tolerance. And that, going back to that initial conversation on fear, what is your fear around this? So it's not a one size fits all answer for everyone.
Never is, which makes it so fun. Most birth moms, as we mentioned, are either smoking cigarettes, and not just one or two, usually half a pack to a pack a day, and or marijuana. Is this a concern?
So that's a great transition after that last statement, right? So again, it's a risk tolerance, right? Tobacco, marijuana, they're not going to be completely benign. We know that, right? There are going to be some challenges and some changes with those, but in general, probably less of a risk for significant long-term concerns than maybe some of the other drugs that we've already mentioned. Having said that, the studies on marijuana were done on kids who were born in the 70s and 80s for the most part. So that marijuana that was there at that point in time is completely different than the marijuana that's out there now, right? The THC component in marijuana back then was maybe a single-digit percentage. Now you can get marijuana with THC 50% or more. And so again, we're comparing in some ways apples and oranges, right? Yeah. And the question is going to be, is that something that we do need to worry about or not? And that's a question mark right now. We don't know what this marijuana is going to do in 15, 20 years, right?
Wow. I never thought about that. So when we say, oh, it's one thing to say, oh, all of our moms used to smoke cigarettes and grandparents or whatever growing up.
Yep.
And even if we said, oh, and they were smoking marijuana too, it's very different than today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the biggest studies were done in the 70s and 80s. It's been a long time now.
Are there any studies in the mix right now being done?
There's always studies out there trying to get started, trying to get funded. It's a tough time right now to get studies funded and to keep things moving forward. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We'll have lots more information in the future about all this, but it's going to take time.
Wow, it's fascinating. A glass of wine here or there, a drink of hard liquor once a week or 5 times throughout the pregnancy, a couple beers. Is there a difference between any of that when it comes to alcohol exposure?
This is such a tough one, right? I wish I was able to say 1 beer a day is okay. 3 is not. But the truth is, it's a gray area. Alcohol is alcohol, right? The little part of the alcohol, ethanol, that we drink is going to be alcohol. That's not going to change. The chemical basis of it isn't going to change whether it's beer versus liquor versus wine. But certainly the concentrations are different in all of those. And in general, reasonable assumptions to make when talking about alcohol or any other substance. The more somebody does it, the more often they do it, the longer they do it for during the pregnancy, the more likely you are to have an outcome, right? And so when we know somebody is drinking very heavily, very frequently throughout most of the pregnancy, we're going to be worried about true fetal alcohol syndrome, right? What we used to call fetal alcohol syndrome years and years ago, with facial feature changes and significant learning disabilities, behavioral problems, etc. Now, though, over time, we've learned that it's not just that syndrome, but more of a spectrum. And some people are not as severely affected as the people who we've previously, had labeled fetal alcohol syndrome. So now, with that understanding that there is more fluidity there, more, of that spectrum, more of a, gradation. Where does that mean that moderate drinking falls or mild drinking falls? We can't give those cutoffs that I wish we could. Absolutely.
Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. Hey there, Adoption Roadmap fam. Are you ready to take the next step on your journey to parenthood? If so, head over to our website and take our quiz. It's called, Are You Ready to Adopt? It's not just about testing your knowledge. It's about making sure you're emotionally and practically prepared for the beautiful, complex journey of adoption. Let's make your dream of parenthood a reality. Go to rgadoptionconsulting.com and take the Are You Ready to Adopt quiz today. That's rgadoptionconsulting.com. The quiz is free, and it will let you know where you are in the process and if you're ready to jump into your adoption journey. In today's episode, I'm having a conversation with my teammate, RG Adoption Consulting's lead consultant, Rachel Patton. When she's not shaping the future of families or parenting her 2 children, Rachel indulges in her passion for health and wellness, embracing practices like transcendental meditation, learning about the latest therapeutic trends, and using essential oils in her everyday life. Rachel and her husband are fans of all things Bob Marley, and you will rarely find Rachel without her signature red lipstick. Rachel's expertise extends through the entire spectrum of adoption experiences, from supporting expectant moms in making informed adoption plans to helping hopeful parents navigate the journey to parenthood. As an adoptive mom herself, she deeply understands the nuances and emotional complexities of raising children touched by the trauma of adoption. Today, we delve into the invaluable lessons Rachel has gathered from her personal and professional life exploring how these experiences have shaped her approach to supporting families and advocating for open adoptions. What's an adoption consultant and why should a family use one?
So the way I always explain it is agencies are really there for expectant families. I think it's interesting because, of course, the families are paying all these fees and that's where the money comes from. But without these expectant moms, they don't have an agency. So without maybe even deliberately doing that, I think that their focus is at least 80% on expectant moms. And so I think a consultant is really solely there for the family. It's nice to have someone on your side, someone who can step in and advocate for you, somebody who can just help you kind of walk through all the murky waters, right, that are coming your way, things you don't even know that you might experience. So having someone to just handhold you through the process, someone you know you can reach out to with any questions, big or small, at any point. And I really feel like we're just like a friend to the family in a sense. I think I end up being pretty close friends with most of my clients. And that's just because you have to trust each other. They have to trust in their consultant. And if you do so, I think they can be just an incredible resource for families that are going through this process. So I would say consultants are there for the families. Agencies are mostly there for expectant moms. So really two sides of the spectrum.
For sure. So,
yeah.
So what, can you talk a little bit about what consultants do and what consultants help families with?
Sure. So we have families that come to us through, well, at all parts in the process. So some families may come to us after they've been trying to adopt for several years. Some families might come to us just knowing they want to adopt and know nothing else. Some families maybe are somewhere in the middle. So we kind of meet them where they are. And education is one of our big things with RG. And we just love for our families to be educated and know exactly what's coming and what to expect and how to process certain things and know the right people to reach out to for that. So having a consultant can help direct you in the right way, whether that's who to lean on for your home study, who to reach out for support in learning more about exposure or how to finance your adoption or how to prepare for your visit with your expectant mom, what to do and what not to do at the hospital, all of those things. So really the teeny tiniest things to writing a letter, just helping them process that, to the really big things about how to be at the hospital and how to support an expectant mom while they're at the hospital. So really it could be anything, but it's kind of everything at the same time, just being there.
So I'll play devil's advocate. So I know basically adoption consultants guide families through the entire process, breaking it down in a way that isn't so overwhelming too, because when you learn all of this stuff and you're like, oh my God, what do I do first? What do I do next? We really help put the blinders on so that they're focused just on one thing at a time. But why do you think a family, do you think it's better to work with a consultant? Obviously you do. Why do you think it's better to work with a consultant versus just work with an agency? Let's say there's an agency that, does a pretty good job at working with the families too and communicating with them. Why is it still a good idea to work with a consultant?
Because I would say consultant is somebody that's going to support you not only through it, but afterwards. However, I think just I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Consultants can give you more cases. I would say you're able to kind of put more feelers out at many different agencies, attorneys, different things like that. So hopefully by having a consultant, you're shortening your wait time in regards to placement, if possible. Not always, but hopefully. And then just having, I think, different clientele, different states, different all of that. So you have more eggs in your basket in a sense. I think that's a big reason people use consultants. Also, they just don't know where to start. Like, how do you choose an agency? How do you know that they're ethical? How do you know that they don't, I don't know, take your money and not do anything else? How do you know they have enough women that they're working with to take as many families as they have? How many placements have they done? I think families don't know the right questions typically to pick out an agency. And so choosing a consultant, I think, helps take the guesswork out of a lot of different areas of adoption. especially when it comes to agencies. I think most people have researched some agencies when they come to us, but they just don't know how to choose the right one, or who is the right one, or what's the right one. So I think that's a really good resource for families as well, to know where to start.
Welcome back to another empowering episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast, where we navigate the heartfelt and intricate journeys of adoption, resilience, and the creation of loving families. I'm your host, Rebecca Gruenspan, and today we are thrilled to introduce our guest, Katie Kinirons-Mejia, a beacon of strength, advocacy, and inspiration in the adoption community. Katie's story is one of immense courage and unwavering dedication. 10 years ago, Katie made the profound decision to place her twins for adoption, a choice which was shaped by the harrowing experience of becoming pregnant through rape. This deeply personal journey has not only transformed her life, but has also fueled her mission to support and uplift other birth mothers navigating similar paths. As the founder and facilitator of Giving More Through Adoption, Katie has created a sanctuary for birth moms and those touched by adoption. Her support group offers invaluable resources and a sense of community with an annual birth mom retreat taking place on the East Coast and culminating in a heartfelt dinner for anyone touched by adoption. But Katie's impact doesn't stop there. She's a multifaceted professional, an inspirational speaker, life coach, real estate professional, educator, and a dedicated mother to 2 grown children, and speaks English and Spanish. There might be some other languages in there we'll get to later. Katie seamlessly blends her professional skills with her personal experiences to inspire and empower others, and is a strong advocate for adoption. Whether she's speaking at events, coaching individuals, or helping families find their way through the adoption process, Katie embodies the spirit of resilience and unconditional love. Today, Katie joins us to share her incredible journey, the motivations behind her advocacy, and the wisdom she has gained through her decade-long experience as a birth mom advocate. From overcoming personal trauma to building supportive communities, Katie's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of giving more through adoption. I will share for me, and I don't know that I've ever shared this publicly, but as adoptive parents, we have to check a lot of boxes as far as the criteria that we are open to. And I remember when I got to the box of a child conceived by rape, I gasped because it was something I never considered, and I never thought about it, and it didn't dawn on me. And I sat with it and I thought, I don't think I'm strong enough personally to navigate this story for a child. Actually, this conversation is for the first time really starting to have me look at it in a totally different way. And I think it depends also on how the mom feels, right? If I were to talk to you and you said everything that you just said to me, I may have thought different about that. And if you would have said, I had a hard time every minute of that pregnancy because this pregnancy reminded me of what happened and it was traumatic and I couldn't wait to get this baby out, I don't know that I could, right? So the narrative throughout the whole thing is part of a person's story. And you just made me see it in a whole different light. And I thank you for that. And I'm always amazed by my clients who I work with. I work with hopeful adoptive parents who don't blink an eye, when we're presenting a situation that is a product of rape, and they're willing and ready to move forward. Listen, all of our children need counseling. So it's just a matter of,
That's true.
are you ready to have this type of, because I've heard from adoptees before that have that as part of their story, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
always so amazed by their strength. But thank you for
Sure.
sharing that part of it, and I wanted to bring it full circle now, because I think that's an important piece of it as well, and just the way you're able to talk about it so openly is so important.
Yeah. Something I say is he only got 10 minutes, and that's all he's getting of my life. He gets no more time.
Amen. A to the men.
Yes.
To the woman. A to the woman. What motivated you to share your story publicly? How did you find that courage?
I think sharing every time somebody asks. Somebody taught me each time you share your story, you heal a little bit more. So it depends who I'm sharing with. Sometimes I will tear up. If I feel super safe, or I feel like that person like you is truly wanting to hear my story and is open to allowing me to heal and pull back another layer. I think it's important for adoption education. I would like to remove that stigma of the birth mom who doesn't want her children, who's high on crack cocaine. I mean, I spend 2 to 3 nights a week at homeless shelter in Albany, where I work overnight, along with my daytime jobs. And we see a lot of women that, have made different decisions for their lives, and their children are taken away. But there are women out there that are, I went through some of the women in the group, right? And I wrote it down. Some of them are now stay-at-home moms. They have, other children that they're now parenting. They were maybe in high school. There's an HR admin. She has 3 degrees now. She was young when she got pregnant, but now has gone on. We have another woman. She works in the Department of Finance for New York State, and she's a birth mom 2 times over. Another birth mom, also 2 times over, owns a cleaning business. Another cleans offices at night. So there's an array of women who chose more. They didn't give up their children. They never gave up on themselves. They didn't give up on a pregnancy. And I would like to pause and talk about women that have chose abortion, because I do get to talk to them, and some of them say, I wish I knew adoption was an option, because they get to that place where they realize that they're missing. And that's a different type of grief. My grief is different with the children I buried. That's closure. I think that's why birth moms grieve so much, is because their children are still living on this earth, and they are grieving parenting. Although they gifted parenting, it's still a loss that they feel, and they see it every day. And I don't think they realize that there would be such grief. And we think, I did have a family member that said, just let him go, Katie. And I was like, no, that's not how it is today. We've done research. Adoptees are traumatized when you do not have contact with them. They don't know their original names. They don't have their original birth certificates. They don't have their medical history. Something beautiful my couple did was kept my maiden name, Kinirons, as a second middle name for my twins. I also did not name them Asher and Lucas. I left that to their parents to name them, because I didn't want them to have a name change. And a lot of birth moms, when they're pregnant and they're called expectant mothers, and then the hopeful adoption couple come together, I think everyone wants to name a baby. But it's really important for the adoptees only going to be a baby for a year. Then they're a toddler for 2, a child for maybe 10, because at 12, they're a sprouting adolescent. And then they live 60 years of their lives as adults. So when we're adopting a person, we're not just adopting a baby. We're adopting a full-grown adult that really needs to have as less trauma as possible. And as an expectant mother, and now you asked, why I share this publicly, is because I'd like to reduce trauma for adoptive parents. Adoptive parents, if they've had fertility issues, it doesn't heal them. And that's what Jess says. This is not a healing from the loss of pregnancy for them. The loss of having a child with their own genetic makeup, that look like them, that might have attributes like them, that's always going to be a loss for an adoptive couple. The loss of not growing up in your birth home, and then or knowing people. And then, whatever might be, a name change or, not knowing the medical history, those are losses that it's important to talk about so that when my two are older, they're going to be able to ask me those things. They have medical history. I've already written a lot out. So if something were to happen to me, my couple's not searching for it in the future.
Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Sara Cole, a seasoned parenting coach with over 20 years of experience helping families create stronger connections and more cooperative homes. As a mom to both biological and adopted children, including a transracial adoptee, Sara knows firsthand that adoptive parenting is different. Frustrated by traditional parenting guides that didn't address adoption-specific challenges, she became a self-proclaimed attachment geek, training with experts like the Neufeld Institute and Siegel's Mindset Institute. Sara's insights are practical and empowering. She believes parents are the ultimate experts for their kids and emphasizes the importance of meeting children where they're at while taking care of yourself along the way. She's also the creator of the Collect Your Kids Guide, a quick and powerful tool to build connection and cooperation in just 2 minutes. Yes, folks, in just 2 minutes. Can you share more about what collecting your kids means and how it's transformed your relationship with your kids? I know you sent me your Collect Your Kids Guide, and I loved it. I love this idea of even like letting them hear you, meeting their eyes, getting a smile from them. It was really cool. But could you explain that for our listeners?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Again, this is something I learned from Dr. Neufeld. I've learned a ton from Dr. Neufeld because he's taken all this developmental science and made it usable, right?
So sharing it, yeah.
Thank you. So collecting is getting their eyes, their smile, and their nod.
Eyes, their smile. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the point is to collect their attention, collect their attention, collect their relationship, get them pointing in the same direction we're pointing in. And what it does is it then allows us as parents to be in the lead.
Okay.
So again, I really wanted to parent differently than I was parented. And the way I was parented was somebody would yell up the stairs and say, hey, you better do this right now or something bad's going to happen to you. Right. And so what I learned from Dr. Neufeld was to go to my kid, get next to them, notice what they're noticing. An example I often give is my son playing Legos, because he really played Legos and he would be totally absorbed, right? And so I would go and sit next to him, notice what he was building, talk to him a little bit. So I was there with him. As soon as I started noticing what he was building, he was interested in me too, right? Because he liked being seen, and I would start to get his eyes a little bit. And then I could admire something he built. This is clever. This is creative. How did you think of that? And then he's smiling, because who doesn't love a compliment, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got his eyes. I've got his smile. Did you think of this yourself? Wow. So now he's smiling. He's nodding. He's connected to me. He's feeling good about me. And then I can say something like, hey, could you come down and set the table? And I've got eye smiles and nods, right? Of course, Mom, I'll come set the table.
Minutes, like you said. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so simple. And yet we make it so complicated by wondering, why isn't our kid listening to us?
Yeah. Simple is not easy, though.
No. If it was, we'd all be perfect parents.
Right.
Because a lot of us know what to do. It's just easier to yell down the stairs and say, honey, stop what you're doing and come do this instead. Whereas if you could just get a simple eyes, nod, and smile, they'd be way more apt to do the thing that you want them to do.
Yeah. Yes. And I want to give us all credit too. We're doing what we were taught to do, right? It's even what you see on television, right? Like this is how we're told directly or subtly to parent. And so doing something different can be really challenging. And then remembering to do it is extra challenging, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you're also a fan of mindfulness, which I think all of this plays into, and kitchen timers to help parents really stay present and implement what we've learned. Is there a specific mindfulness exercise you? Oh, let's see it. Let's see your. If
I
you're
always
watching
have
on
a kitchen
YouTube.
timer nearby. This is my little strawberry timer.
Oh, it's so cute. If you're not watching on YouTube, Sara has this little strawberry. That's her quote unquote kitchen timer. That's adorable. So do you have a mindfulness exercise you can take us through or tell us about?
Well, let's talk about this in two different ways.
Please.
One is I keep these timers near me, and now my phone has, I think, unlimited numbers of timers available to me. Because when I'm trying to do something different, I'm not going to remember. So I need help. I need systems. When I first started learning to collect my kids, I actually set a timer for an hour, and every hour I would go and collect them, just see if I could get their eyes, their smile, and their nod. Not necessarily to ask them to do something, because kids are pattern recognition machines. And if every time I collect my kids, I then ask them to do something, pretty soon I would walk in the room and they'd be like, what do you want? So in just a way of how do I warm up this relationship? How do I get them feeling how much I care about them, how much they matter to me? So I will offer a challenge to clients who are just starting to work with me. So you're home for 3 hours tomorrow afternoon, set a timer, collect them 3 times, see how it goes. Right. And it's every kid is different. Every parent is different. This kind of circles around to that. We are each the expert in our own children. What my son needs to be collected is really different than what my daughter needs to be collected. I actually will collect my husband as well. I collect the family dog. Everybody needs something different. And what I can do to collect my kids is really different than what works for my husband.
Oh my God, if you're listening and you take on this challenge, we definitely want to hear from you. So either comment in wherever you're listening from, or email Sara. How can they reach you?
Sara at saracoleparentcoach.com.
And Cole is Cole. We'll link that, or I'll link my email address too. We definitely want to hear how that went, and if you did it. Also, how can they get their hands on the Collect Guide? Collect Your Kids Guide.
Yes, it's on my website.
Okay,
so they can go. They can go to my website. There's just right there on the front page. It says "Get my guide here free." And Sara has no H, so it's Sara.
What's your website?
saracoleparentcoach.com.
Okay, perfect. I didn't want to.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, even if people aren't currently parenting, they can practice this on their sweeties. I have clients who've been known to practice it on their bosses, because things go better at work if your boss feels connected to you. People do it with their pets. Cats, a little tricky, but the dog definitely. So
yeah, I'm always asking for her eyes.
Yeah.
I can't always get her to smile though the way I want her to. And
the little tail wag.
And ever since you've been, you talked about the stages and not wanting to grow up. All I want to do is have a little music break and sing, "I won't grow up." I don't want to be a whatever.
Yeah.
Do you remember that from Peter Pan?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you believe that ultimately parents are the experts on their kids, and I couldn't agree more. But so many parents feel so overwhelmed or unsure that what they're doing isn't the right way, or look elsewhere for advice. How do you help parents rediscover their confidence and so that they can trust in themselves?
Yeah, that's a really huge question.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge that I think we all face. Um, I don't know if y'all watch the Great British Baking Show. I find it such a useful way to think about parenting sometimes, which is in the Great British Baking Show, they have 3 challenges in each season or in each episode. And the first one, they come in knowing what they're going to make. And they make it and it gets judged. The second one is called the technical challenge.
Okay.
And they're given, they have their table with ingredients and it's covered with a cloth. And when they take the cloth off, they're told what they're going to make. And when they take the cloth off, they have their ingredients and then they have just the most bare bones instructions, like make the dough, make the custard, bake until done. Right? And what I've noticed over the years of watching this show is the people who've made it before do pretty well. The people who've seen it in a shop window, they're probably going to pull off something that is edible and kind of gets some appreciation from the judges. People who've never seen it before, they have no idea what they're doing. They don't know if it's supposed to be tall or short, what kind of texture. And you'll see them like looking out of the side of their eyes at other people's tables, trying to figure out what they're doing. And I think as parents, we often find ourselves in that, here's the technical challenge, and I've never seen this thing before, right? People tell us, talk to your kids about this in a developmentally appropriate way. How do we know what a developmentally appropriate way is? And I've been hearing more and more, well, you just need to set firm boundaries with your kids. And regularly I hear parents say, what does that even mean? Right? So when I talk to parents and they're feeling overwhelmed and they're feeling like they don't know their kid and they don't know what to do, the first thing I always do is I teach them to collect their kids, because when that relationship is warmed up, things get easier, but also parents are able to see their kids better. And one of the next things I do is we talk through what every human needs, what their kids got and what they missed, no matter how or when they joined their family through adoption. You know, what happened in utero, what happened in the womb, what happened when they were born. Did they move into your family immediately? Did they not move into your family immediately? Were there medical issues? Are they a super sensitive kid? Did they have colic? Like, babies can take in or not take in the love that's offered, sometimes based on medical issues, the level of stress they're having, if they're going through substance withdrawal. There's a lot that can be offered, but they can't take in. And that, just having that conversation is really eye-opening for parents. It can be painful, right?
Sure.
To see what our kids that we care so much about did get or did not get, even when we were standing guard. And when their eyes are open, when they can see their kid, when they can see what root of attachment their kid is at, they start to respond differently, naturally.
Yeah.
Neufeld says the number one determiner of what we do is what we see. If I see an entitled, spoiled brat, I'm going to come down hard on them. If I see a kid who's afraid they're going to lose their mama, who didn't have enough as a baby, who's always striving and afraid, I'm going to respond really differently.
Yeah.
Right? So helping parents see their kids differently. And then my experience is that parents immediately start to shift how they respond, shift what they're doing. And then it's just a conversation of celebrating those wins. Wow, look at you. This feels like a tiny step, but see how much progress you're making.
So important.
So important. And then celebrating the shifts in their kids. And sometimes it's hard to see. I had somebody the other day come to me and they were upset because their daughter was screaming horrible things at them. But when we talked about what are these horrible things, what we realize is, oh, she's talking about what's really going on inside of her. She's talking about her deepest truths. And she's doing it in a very immature way, by screaming and kind of dumping. But she's an early teen. They don't have a lot of skills. In an adult, what we would love to see is, hey, I'm having a hard time and I really love to tell you about these deep feelings that are driving me. But, she's a teen. So what she's got as a tool is, I'm going to scream at you.
Right. I'm going to be angry.
Yes. And so when we start to see and celebrate those little things, when we start to reframe what we're hearing, I notice parents settle down. I see parents feel a lot more confident. I see parents feel a lot more grateful for the relationship that they're building with their kids, and also to have a lot more compassion, both for their kids who are struggling and doing the best they can, coming from challenging behaviors, but also for themselves. Yeah. We're working, I think all of us are working so hard to show up in the ways that we think our kids need. Yeah. And when parents are feeling overwhelmed, I really want them to just pause and be like, wow, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I'm going a million miles an hour trying to do the right thing.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.